On the cover page of chapter 175, you will see Luffy donning the headgear that consists of sheep's wool and horns. Now, why does this matter? I mean, there's so many different cover pages of Luffy being represented by so many different animals. Well, I wouldn't say it exactly has to do with what happens in the chapter itself, but more the chapter's title. Now, what you see on screen simply says release. So, what does that matter? Well, actually, the Japanese word used was kaiho. So what does kaiho mean? Well, one of the translation is release. So I'm not accusing Viz of being inaccurate, but another translation is liberation, which I think was Oda's intention. In fact, to back up this claim, and I would even go as far as to say solidifies it as fact, is the fact that the epithet of Nika in Japanese is Kaiho no Senshi, which means warrior of liberation. When Luffy turned gear 5th, Zunisha said that she heard the Kaiho no Doramu, which means drums of liberation. The reason I bring all of this up is to tell you that I believe JoyBoy was a sheep mink, or at least he was part sheep mink. However, that is not new to my channel. I've been talking about this for quite a while. This video is actually going to be a lot more about JoyBoy's mother, which may seem like so wild to even attempt to try to figure out, given the fact we barely know anything about JoyBoy. How in the world am I going to figure out who his mother is? Well, just you wait and see. I have a mountain of evidence to show you that Imu is the holy mother of the sun god. This is the first in a series of videos in which I show you my deep dive research into figuring out what happened during the Void Century and who are the key players. What to expect from future videos is things like, what are the ancient weapons? Who are the Gorosei? Did JoyBoy have family members? Things that may seem like a reach, but once you see all the supporting proof I have, you'll realize I'm not as crazy as I initially seem. So enjoy this roller coaster. Ever notice Kumas Bible? Ever notice the picture depicted on it? Every iteration, there's always a central figure surrounded by light. On the cover, it clearly depicts a woman with one eye closed and her head in the clouds. And the image is surrounded by wings. That picture looks one-to-one with JoyBoy's mom. Alright, I'm trolling. First of all, that was nearly word for word with my friend Tachi's video titled The Greatest Emu Theory Part 1.1. Now, I'm not going to tell you to watch it just because he's my pal, but also it just has compelling evidence. I only promote theories that I think are really good, and this one is knocking it out of the park just off the first one. However, this video is not a theory connected to his. The reason I'm mentioning it is because it somehow lands in a very similar territory despite me coming at it from an entirely different angle. So, I said it was JoyBoy's mom. I'm half joking, half serious because there is something there. Well, what I'm saying is that I think JoyBoy is the One Piece equivalent of Jesus. I already have 2 videos that show proof towards that, and it's very damning evidence. Now, if this was the real world, the woman on the cover of Kumas Bible would be the mother of Jesus, Mary. And I actually think the woman on that cover is in fact Mary. However, here's the problem. I think that JoyBoy's mother is named Mary, spelled M-E-R-R-Y. However, the woman on the cover of that Bible is in fact still spelled Mary, just like the real world, M-A-R-Y. So let me explain. I'm going to start by summarizing why I think JoyBoy is the real world equivalent of Jesus. The first time we're ever introduced to JoyBoy is through a message about the Noah, which is a story from Abrahamic religions. Although Jesus is not directly tied to the Noah or Noah's Ark, it is ships that are just about the best piece of evidence that show a glaring obvious parallel between Luffy and Jesus. In hindsight, it seems very unlikely for it to be a coincidence that Luffy would have a ship themed after the sun while also having a sun-themed devil fruit. Clearly there's something there. So then what about the Going Merry? Could that somehow be related to Luffy's devil fruit? Well, I believe so. In fact, I think JoyBoy was part sheep mink. I've been saying for years that I believe devil fruits derive from the soul of what I call the prime user. The prime user is the first to use this power before it got turned into a fruit. So in this case, the prime user of the Hito Hito no Mi Maronika would be JoyBoy. Now, if you haven't seen the two videos I mentioned before, this may sound very far-fetched, but you just gotta trust me and roll with it to proceed in this theory. So you could either click out of this, go watch those videos and come back, or just go under the assumption that JoyBoy represents Jesus and the rest of this theory will still make sense. And those videos will be linked in the description, by the way, but let's move on now. Maybe you did watch those videos front to back and you're still not convinced that JoyBoy is half sheep mink, half Lunarian. The Lunarian part makes sense because, they're gods and everything, but it's the sheep mink I think throws people off. Why not a lion or a tiger or a monkey? All these majestic, powerful creatures within the animal kingdom. Yet I propose that it is a mere farm animal, a sheep. The most docile, meek creatures of the whole animal totem pole. If JoyBoy is such a monumental character, surely Oda would pick a more compelling animal to represent him, right? And that's why I have just a thing to convince you why Oda would deem a sheep worthy of being JoyBoy. Do you know who the king of the minks were before Nekomamushi and Inuruashi? It was actually a sheep mink. So don't go saying sheep minks aren't special when you had one literally ruling over the entire population of the people. Say what you will about sheep, but clearly Oda respects them enough to make them kings of other animals. Also, to add on to the specialness, for some reason, Hitsugi has hooves for hands like Chopper and Brainpoint rather than normal-looking humanoid hands like the other mink. All the more evident when you look at the other sheep mink, Yomo. Speaking of which, he is known to the people of Zou as Pastor Yomo. I mean, think about it. There's kings, there's religious leaders as sheeps. Clearly there is something there, and we're not done with Zou just yet. There's a minor character within that arc that perfectly ties together being a sheep mink, grants an afro, or just being related to sheeps in general grants afros. There's actually a artificial smile user named Sheep's Head, and of course his zone animal is a sheep. And if you notice, his hair for some reason becomes an afro, and it's not like his devil fruit is all over his body. It actually only affects his hands and his hair, and it's not connected from his hands to his hair. His hands are transformed, his whole arm and chest and neck is normal, and then his hair is an afro. It's like this weird detail Oda decided to put in there. And again, just more Afrogen proof. So with Kuma having that bear ears, I do believe it's related to his hair. And Mary also has an afro and it's woolly because he's related to sheep, but he also has horns. Now that's the really interesting thing. Why the horns though? Is he mink? Well, no, because he's not covered from head to toe. We've seen what sheep minks look like. They don't look like Mary. So that's a very interesting detail that Mary has the horns. And like I said, I think that JoyBoy is a sheep mink. And Kuma's daughter is Jewelry Bonnie, who said, Kuma's a special person, not her. So that clearly shows that she is probably adopted by Kuma. Check out Polly Pete's video on that. It's fantastic, and he's making a follow-up one featuring me, so definitely watch that one before the part 2 comes out. But anyway, she, even though she's not a special person and doesn't have afro hair, what she does have is the initials JB, like JoyBoy, and that could play a role into why Kuma adopted her. Now that we have circled back to talking about Kuma, let's finally get into who is the woman on the cover of his Bible. Well, to start this, let's look at the surname of Kuma. It just so happens to be the same as the saint and one of the apostles, aka followers of Jesus, and that would be Bartholomew. Why this is relevant to the woman on the cover is because of the relevance of Mary within the Christian religion. Many sects of Christianity don't just look at the Virgin Mary as just the woman who birthed Jesus and that's the end of her story and, there's nothing to care about. There are some that don't think there's really much to look into Mary, but there are many others that actually worship Mary. So, given that being the case, it's not too much of a stretch to think that someone that is worthy of worship would be on the cover of a holy book. But it gets a lot deeper than that. One of the titles of Mary is the woman clothed in the sun. And that should start to get some gears turning. What's interesting about that title is it doesn't necessarily imply that Mary is the sun or that she is a god of some sort, but rather that she is blessed. Not only blessed with immaculate conception and giving birth to Jesus, but that she herself is actually supernatural. The image depicting the woman clothed in the sun often shows baby Jesus in her hands with the sun in the background, which is very similar to the woman on Kumas Bible, just without holding the baby in her hands. There's also one particular detail that starts to remind me of Emu, and that's the fact that she is stated to have stars revolve around her. And that reminds me of the Gorosei. Now, the Gorosei is 5, but in Mary's case, it's 12, which represent the 12 apostles, or the 12 tribes of Judah. And because of this, she also earns the title Queen of the Holy Land, Israel. And once again, that starts to make me think of Emu. And now's the time to hit you with a haymaker. I could show you proof that has been in our face this whole time. What is the name of the Holy Land that Emu rules over? Mary Joie. While it is obvious that the home of the world nobles are named after the bourgeois, which literally just means the high class, it was never explained why Mary is a part of the name. Well, I think I just gave you one of the answers. I think there's a lot more deeper meanings to it, which we'll go in later, but I'll give you just one more detail. The fact that it's called Mary Geo, the G-E-O part. Well, Geo means earth, so it's in a way, it's like saying Mary's earth. And if Emu is the ruler of the world, then she must be the Mary that owns earth. Now, I think I could just end the video right now, but I still have so much more. But let's just change the pace for now and focus on something much simpler, and that is just the name Mary. The mother of Jesus is named Mary, spelled M-A-R-Y. And I believe that the mother of JoyBoy will be named Mary, spelled M-E-R-R-Y. Not only are they pronounced different, but they sound different. And this is very important, not just because of, nitpicking or anything, but it means that the kanji for the names are also different. This means that Oda is deliberately trying to differentiate the two. In fact, when you look at the kanji for the Going Mary, as an example, and compare it to the kanji for Marie Joie, neither of them capture the right sound for Mary, as in the Virgin Mary. See, Going Mary focuses more on the E, which makes sense because that's the way it's spelled, Mary. Mary. And then Marie Joie, it focuses more on the A, so it's Ma, like Mama. Like what Big Mom always says, Ma, 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 Ma. It's Marie Joie, not Mary Joie. So it may seem like I'm nitpicking, but by the end of this video, I think you'll understand why I focus on differentiating the two. If you were to type Mary into Google Translate, what you would see is that the Japanese version of it has both the E and the A within it. So Mary, not Mari or Mary. But anyway, let's get back to focusing on why I think JoyBoy's mother would be named Mary, M-E-R-R-Y. And no, I don't think her name would be Mary simply because it shares the same name as Luffy's ship. Luffy's ship is named after Mary, the shipwright, who was a man. But clearly the name is gender neutral. We know this because Mary is obviously named after the song Mary Had a Little Lamb. And that right there is the first parallel dynamic between Mary and Jesus in relation to Mary and JoyBoy. You see, Jesus is a shepherd, and I'm assuming JoyBoy is a sheep. A shepherd owned sheep. Well, Mary had a little lamb, so it's implied that Mary owned a sheep. Well, this time Mary is the sheep. Then you should factor in what Mary means. The definition of Mary is basically synonymous with happy. Well, you know what else is synonymous with happy? Joy. In fact, because of that, I don't think Mary alone would be JoyBoy's mother's name. It would probably be something similar to JoyBoy, in which it's a conjunction of two words. And like JoyBoy is JB, Mary would probably be MB. And my best guess would be Mary Bell. Bell means a beautiful girl, but it also sounds like the word bell spelled B-E-L-L, which is often associated with sheeps, and also happens to sound like Maribel. And finally, Mary is not a very common word. More often than not, it's used in conjunction with Christmas. You know, the holiday that celebrates the birth of Jesus. In fact, both Mary and Christ are always next to each other. Mary Christ. In fact, with that in mind, I wouldn't be surprised if her name was actually Merry Christmas. Now, I hope you're catching on to the similarity. You know, Mary Bell is basically equivalent to saying Joy Girl. But it gets even deeper. I believe that Mary Bell comes from an island of nymphs. What leads me to believe this, because the story of Jesus is tied to Rome, Greece, and Egypt, and of course, Israel. All of this will play a big role for JoyBoy, as I think Arabasta, the One Piece equivalent of Egypt, will play a big role. I believe that the World Government Society, which is represented by Rome, hence why one of the Gorosei is named Saturn. I believe that the people that are Minks and the people of Zou are represented as Israel, and this is evident by Zunisha being in reference to the Wandering Jew. So then all that leaves left is Greek. So what is represented by Greek within One Piece? Well, we already know the ancient weapons are named after Greek gods. So then there must have been some kind of ancient kingdom linked to Greece. And I believe that was the home of the Lunarians, known as Olympus, a sky island that no longer exists in the present day of One Piece. I believe that at the time Mary Bell lived, Lunarians were basically the rulers of the world, the gods of the world, in fact. Nymphs are from Greek culture. Nymphs are always female and are of nature. They're the best at growing plant life, flowers, fruits, and whatnot. Nymphs are often portrayed as fairies, and the closest thing to fairies in the world of One Piece are the dwarves. And this actually matches up because we know the dwarves are the best at growing fruits, hence why Doflamingo chose them to make the smiles. Now obviously I don't think Mary is a dwarf, I think she's a sheep mink, and just that. I expect that wherever Mary is from, there will be all different types of races. So dwarves, minks, possibly even reptilians, bug people, feathered people, races we don't see in the modern day of One Piece but may have existed over 800 years ago. So then, what is this island Mary Bell is from? I believe it was called Amazon Galilee, which obviously sounds like Amazon Lily, just without the G in front of it. So then what is Galilee? Well, Galilee is the name of a sea that connects Israel, Rome, Greece, and Egypt, which is exactly the places I said will be relevant to this story and is relevant to the story of Jesus. If Greek culture is one of the main influence for Lunarians, as I speculate, then it should come as no surprise that Lunarians play a key role in the history of Amazon Lily, because Amazonians obviously originate from Greek culture. Now, what do we know about Amazon Lily, and how does it match up to what I'm saying about Mary Bell? Well, it's a place made of only women. All of their names are based off of flowers. And they're not supposed to interact with men, which would give the expectation that they should be virgins or maidens. Now, here's what I believe solidifies that Amazon Lily used to be an island full of nymphs. So previously, I related the lily portion of Amazon Lily to Galilee. However, I do not think the flower symbolism is irrelevant. In fact, we know for a fact it is in reference to the flower lily, because all of the inhabitants of Amazon Lily are named after flowers. Well, do you know the scientific name of lily? It's actually Nymphaea. It's literally in reference to nymphs. So if you were to exchange lily for its scientific name, it would be Amazon Nymphaea, which is like basically saying it is like the Amazon, which is an island full of women, and the women are nymphs. I mean, it's just in the name even. But I want to point our attention to Ruskaina for a second, an island near Amazon Lily, because there's just this interesting look about it. There's these elevated platforms made out of rock, but there's green all on the top of them, and it kind of makes it look like lily pads, which would make sense since it's next to an island literally called Amazon Lily. But then it makes you wonder, why would there even be lily pads if the island itself isn't submerged? Well, maybe at some point it was submerged. Maybe there was a lot more water in that area. And the animals that go with lily pads are usually frogs. And we haven't seen an amphibious race within One Piece yet, but perhaps there was one in ancient times. I actually suspect that there will be a toad character that is in reference to Cain, because, well, there is a species known as the cane toad. And I believe that Maribel is in reference to Abel. So Cain actually kills Abel, and then the blood of Abel blesses the land or curses the land, depending on which story you're looking into. Well, on Ruskaina, there is this special sacred tree. In fact, they don't really point much attention to the tree. If you ask me, and it doesn't even look exactly like a tree. It almost looks like a big giant root vegetable. But anyway, Luffy leaves his straw hat there because it's the most safe area on the island. And it's like, why do all the animals respect this sacred ground? Well, perhaps that is actually the resting place of Maribel. So now, let me tell you what I think Maribel's family name will be. I think it will be Callisto. Callisto is one of the most known nymphs in Greek culture, and her name means the most beautiful, which ties into the theme of Maribel. Well, oddly enough, really the most famous thing about Callisto is the fact that she was Zeus's lover. Her claim to fame is her affair with a god. And then to add double meaning to it, well, Callisto in Japanese would change the L into an R, so it would be Christo. Well, Christ in Japanese is Kiristo. Literally, they are basically the same except for one letter is being exchanged. Callisto, Christo. See, I wasn't joking when I said Maribel Christmas or whatever. You know, the Christ name can even still exist. And we're not done yet. There is a triple entendre with this. So, Callisto is actually known as a moon of Jupiter. We're not going to cover just yet the relevance of Jupiter, but we're going to focus on the fact that it's not just called any moon, it's actually called a Galilean moon. So Callisto is even tied to Galilee. Lastly, while we're on the topic of flowers, I want to finish by saying something that really blew my mind. I've been thinking about this theory for months. Well, recently in one of the newest chapters, it showed Vegapunk created this machine that shoots flowers. And what he got for doing that was the E-Bell Peace Prize. Well, first of all, E-Bell is just the second half of Mary Bell. Like, what a crazy coincidence. And also, it is shooting flowers. Again, I think flowers are related to Mary Bell, being a nymph and all that. And then it's a peace prize. And what do we know about that tree that I speculate could be the resting place of Mary Bell? Well, it's the most peaceful part of that island. So, you know, we're just connecting so many dots. But anyway, I've been going on so long, I gotta wrap this up. Now, with a name that references beauty not once but twice, you would think that Maribel Callisto is some kind of girly girl, like a Disney princess type. Well, I actually think she'll be quite tomboyish, because even though she's on this island and is meant to just be a maiden that never interacts with men or goes outside of her island, I do believe that in her heart of hearts, she really does want to see the outside world. She really does want to see all the different types of people and races and meet men. Her being such a tomboy will be similar to Jewelry Bonnie, which once again has the initials JB. In fact, I think that Maribel might even have a Jubilee. Jubilee actually means ram's horn, and ram is another word for sheep. And I believe she will be inspired by Pan. Pan is a satyr. Maidens of Galilee are supposed to worship Meliadis, or in Japanese it would be Meriadis, because the L and R switch, which, as I'm sure you can tell, Meriadis has Mary in it, and who of which Maribel is named after. I'll explain to you next week who Meriadis is and why it's so relevant to this when I talk about the Lunarians a bit more. But for now, we're going to end this by explaining Maribel was rebellious within her island of Galilee, which doesn't bode well. But it's not like they're going to kill her or anything like that. No, actually, they're going to send her to another island to be reformed. On this other island, she's expected to become a sister nun, known as a Mary. No, not M-E-R-R-Y, a Mary, M-A-R-Y, which is different. She'll even get a new name. I guess I should say she'll become a Mari to be more consistent, but you get the point. I'm gonna just say Mary. Anyway, you're gonna find this out on my next video. I'm gonna tell you who I think the father of JoyBoy is, and hint, it is not the one true God or anything like that. It will be a God, just not like the Immaculate Conception way. I'm gonna explain a little bit more about what I believe the Lunarians were like back then and what Olympus was like. And of course, this isn't just me thinking, but showing evidence to support this from the story, as well as my own deep research into history and mythology and etymology and whatnot. And all that I mentioned coming up is just part 2. There's going to be further parts 3 and 4 and possibly more. And on top of that, I have a bonus video coming out, a 1.5 in a way, in which I talk about Amazon Galilee a little more. In fact, I have an even better origin name for Amazon Lily that's just a little bit more tweaked version of this Galilee. The reason I didn't talk about it in this video is because, well, believe it or not, as scattered as these videos are, I do try to have a main central focus. And this video was JoyBoy's mother. So I'm going to come out with another video in which I just go a lot more in depth in what I think the old Amazon Lily was like and the evidence that I believe points to that. But if you watched this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Likes and subscribes, that's always appreciated. But what I like most is actually comments. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you think of the theory. I want to hear your own theories. I want you to guess things such as, what do you think I'm going to say Maribel's new name is going to be? Who do you think is the god that is the father of JoyBoy? Hint, it's a Lunarian. And Lunarians are probably going to be based off Greek gods, so do with that what you will. Guess what you think the island that Maribel is going to be sent to, what that is like. If you have more information to say, if you think I was wrong about something and want to correct me, I appreciate all of it. So thank you again. Bye.